Bruno Mars, at 39, finally reveals the truth about the rumors, the whispers that followed him for years, the secrets tucked behind the flashing lights and the Grammy-winning hits. He's now speaking out. It's the kind of revelation that makes the world pause. Fans across the globe who have danced to Uptown Funk and sung along to Just the Way You Are suddenly find themselves asking the same question. What could Bruno Mars possibly have been hiding all this time? For years, the industry painted him as smooth, flawless, the ultimate showman. His voice could silence arenas, his energy could bring stadiums to life, and his charm seemed impenetrable. But as Bruno now admits, the truth was far from perfect. In a recent sit-down, he didn't just open up, he shattered the image everyone thought they knew. With a steady but heavy voice, he confirmed what had once only been rumors. Behind the music, behind the sequins and soul, there were battles few ever imagined. Gambling debt that nearly cost him everything. Heartbreaks that haunted him long after the spotlight dimmed. Childhood trauma that shaped his drive. And secret struggles that nearly broke him. But now, nearly 40, Bruno Mars is ready to tell the story himself. He isn't hiding. He isn't sugarcoating. He's confirming the rumors, every last one. And what does this mean for the future of the superstar who built his empire on rhythm, groove, and unshakable confidence? Stay tuned, because the revelations are only beginning. At just 4 years old, Peter Jean Hernandez, known later to the world as Bruno Mars, was already being dressed up, pushed on stage, and told to perform. Most kids that age are learning their ABCs, but Bruno? He was singing doo-wop, wiggling his hips and commanding a crowd like a miniature superstar. And it wasn't just a one-off performance. This became his life. Night after night, stage after stage, Bruno was performing while other kids were climbing trees or trading baseball cards. By the time he was 5 years old, he had already earned the nickname Little Elvis. And the resemblance wasn't just in the hair and the tiny bedazzled jumpsuits. He could move like Elvis, sing like Elvis, and electrify an audience like Elvis. The crowds loved him. He was the star attraction in his family's Hawaiian show, the little boy who made people gasp and laugh and cheer. But behind the cheers, something darker was brewing. Childhood was slipping through his fingers, and he didn't even realize it. Imagine this: while most children experience the carefree joy of growing up, Bruno was learning how to deal with stage fright, memorizing set lists, and performing with adults 2 or 3 times his age. His normal wasn't normal. By the time he reached 10 years old, Bruno had already performed in over 1,000 shows. Think about that, 1,000 stages before most kids have even sung at their first school recital. And that kind of intensity shapes you. It turns you into a professional, but it also leaves scars. Bruno would later admit that he loved the stage, but there was always a piece of him that longed for something simple, something normal. A Saturday morning cartoon, a bike ride, a day without expectations. He was, in every sense, the golden child who never had a childhood. The applause was intoxicating, but it came with pressure. Pressure to always deliver. Pressure to help support his struggling family. Pressure to be perfect when all he really wanted was just to be a kid. And this is where the seeds of future struggles were planted. Because when you grow up under the spotlight, when your earliest memories are tied to applause and performance, it's hard to ever step away. The line between who you are and what the world expects of you becomes blurred. So yes, Bruno Mars was born to shine, but the shine came at a cost. And that cost, those missing pieces of childhood, would echo through his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. And it was only the beginning. The lights dimmed, not just on Bruno Mars's career, but on his very life. At just 12 years old, the boy who once dazzled tourists in Hawaii with his uncanny Elvis impersonations was suddenly thrust into a darkness few could imagine. It started with the collapse of his parents' marriage. To the outside world, it was just another divorce. But for young Bruno, it was the shattering of the foundation that held him together. One day, he had a home filled with music, laughter, and the warmth of family. The next, that stability was gone. And when the family split, so did the finances. Bruno and his siblings suddenly found themselves without a roof over their heads. Not metaphorically, literally, homeless. Imagine this, a 12-year-old boy who once stood under spotlights in sequin jumpsuits, now huddled in the backseat of a car at night. The stars above were his ceiling. His blanket was the humid Hawaiian air. And when the car wasn't the option, rooftops became his shelter. In interviews years later, Bruno would recall a particularly surreal chapter, living in the abandoned grounds of the Honolulu Zoo. Yes, the zoo. The echoes of wild animals became his lullabies. The cracked concrete and rusting cages became his neighborhood. He described how he and his family made do with what little they had, often eating packets of rice and relying on pure resilience to get through each day. But the darkest part wasn't just the hunger or the fear, it was the humiliation. A child who had once been celebrated as Little Elvis now had to hide his reality. How do you tell classmates, "I slept in a zoo last night"? The shame dug deeper than any hunger pangs. And yet, in that pit of despair, a fire was burning. "I didn't want to give up," Bruno once confessed. Music became his lifeline. The same voice that entertained thousands as a boy became his weapon against hopelessness. He would sing not for fame, but for survival, a way to drown out the silence of the nights. This period forged the Bruno Mars we know today. The swagger, the confidence, the showmanship, all born from a kid who knew that if he could survive the zoo, he could survive anything. But it also left scars. The pain of losing a home, of watching his family crumble, of being forced to grow up before his time. These wounds never truly healed. When the lights went out, Bruno learned two things. First, that nothing in life is guaranteed. And second, that the only way forward was to fight, to hustle, and to hold on to the one thing no one could take from him, his gift. But the question remains, how did this boy, stripped of everything at 12, climb back to become one of the greatest entertainers of his generation? The answer begins with a gamble, and not the kind you'd expect. After years of struggle, sleeping in cars and abandoned rooftops, Bruno Mars finally had a glimmer of hope. At 18, armed with his voice, a few demo tapes, and a relentless drive, he landed his first record deal. It was with Motown, a label steeped in music history, the kind of opportunity most artists would dream of. But dreams can be cruel. Motown, despite the legacy and prestige, wasn't prepared for Bruno Mars. The label didn't know how to market him. They wanted a Latin pop star, someone to replicate Ricky Martin's success, someone who fit their mold. But Bruno had a vision of his own. He wanted to sing, write, and perform music that was true to him, not what a label demanded. Within months, that first deal fell apart. Dropped. No album, no release, just a stack of promises unfulfilled. For a young man who had already sacrificed so much, it was devastating. The humiliation cut deep. He had already told family and friends that he was signed, had imagined the path ahead, only to have it vanish overnight. Bruno could have given up. Many would have. But instead, he turned that failure into fuel. He realized that the industry wasn't going to hand him a stage. He would have to build it himself.
It was during this low point that he met Philip Lawrence, a talented songwriter and performer with an eye for hits. Their friendship wasn't instant fame. It was a bond forged in struggle, ambition, and shared frustration. Together, they formed a team that would change everything, the Smeezingtons. The early days weren't glamorous. Bruno and Philip wrote music wherever they could, sometimes in a cramped car outside a small Hollywood studio, sometimes in makeshift apartments with nothing but ideas and determination. They worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, studying songs, analyzing patterns, learning what made music connect with people. They were obsessed. And then slowly, the breakthrough came. Not with Bruno singing his own songs yet, but by writing for others. They created hits for stars like Sean Kingston, Flo Rida, and CeeLo Green. Each song sold, each song climbed the charts. Bruno was learning the ropes of the industry, mastering the craft, and building a reputation as a hitmaker. It was a strategic move. By helping others rise, he was laying the foundation for his own solo career. The music world took notice. Labels, artists, producers all wanted to know who this young man with the golden voice and uncanny songwriting ability was. The humiliation of Motown's rejection became irrelevant. The failure didn't define him, it refined him. Bruno Mars had learned the first rule of show business: resilience. You fall, yes. You fail, yes. But you rise again. And sometimes that rise is more spectacular because of the fall. By the mid-2000s, Bruno wasn't just a performer or a background songwriter. He was a force, a creator shaping the sound of modern pop and R&B. The next step? Taking all we had learned and stepping fully into the spotlight himself. But that journey, from writing behind the scenes to becoming the face of a global phenomenon, was just beginning. And it all started with a fall that almost broke him, only to make him stronger than ever. By 2010, Bruno Mars was ready. After years of struggle, failed deals, and writing hits for others, he finally stepped into the spotlight for himself. And when he did, the world listened. His debut single, Just the Way You Are, wasn't just another pop song. It was a statement, a smooth, heartfelt ballad that showcased not only his incredible voice, but also his ability to connect with listeners on an intimate level. The song hit the Billboard Hot 100, climbed to #1 in just 8 weeks, and stayed on the chart for 48 weeks. It was certified 13x platinum in the US, a staggering achievement for a debut. Fans across the globe sang along, sharing stories of love, heartbreak, and devotion, all set to Bruno's golden voice. The accolades followed quickly. The Grammys recognized him as the Best New Artist of the Year, and he walked away with Best Male Pop Vocal Performance for Just the Way You Are, making him the youngest male to win that award since Stevie Wonder in 1974. Platinum records lined his walls, and the music world began to take notice. Bruno Mars wasn't just another pop singer, he was a force of nature. But fame didn't just stop at records and awards. By 2014, Bruno had conquered one of the biggest stages in the world, the Super Bowl halftime show. The performance was electric, flawless, and unforgettable. Millions watched live, millions more streamed it later, and Bruno proved that he could hold the world's attention with nothing but charisma, talent, and pure showmanship. The hits kept coming. Grenade, Locked Out of Heaven, and Uptown Funk dominated charts globally. Streaming numbers soared into the billions. Ticket sales broke records, and his tours became spectacles that fans would remember for a lifetime. Bruno Mars wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable. And yet, beneath the sequins, glitter, and roaring crowds, cracks began to show. The pressures of constant touring, maintaining perfection, and living up to a public image that seemed untouchable started to weigh heavily. Fame, after all, is a double-edged sword. Every performance demanded energy. Every appearance demanded a smile, and every song demanded perfection. The boy who had grown up performing to survive now had to perform to maintain an empire. Behind closed doors, Bruno wrestled with exhaustion, self-doubt, and the remnants of the childhood and teenage years that had forced him to grow up too fast. The man who once sang for survival was now singing under expectation, pressure, and scrutiny. He was adored, celebrated, and envied, but that didn't make the weight any lighter. Even so, Bruno continued to shine. Grammys, platinum records, and global tours became the proof of his resilience. But the cracks were subtle, often invisible to fans. They revealed a man who, despite global adoration, was still human. Someone who had fought his entire life for this moment, yet realized that the spotlight could be as isolating as it was glorious. The mega-stardom era was more than a rise, it was a triumph. But it was also a warning. Behind every glittering performance and roaring crowd, there is a story of struggle, pressure, and the delicate balance of a life lived under the world's gaze. And Bruno Mars, unstoppable as he was, would soon face challenges that no award or record could shield him from. Even as Bruno Mars rose to global superstardom, there was one part of his life he guarded with an almost impenetrable shield: his heart. Amid the flashing cameras, sold-out arenas, and platinum records, Bruno found someone who grounded him in a world that moved too fast: Jessica Caban. They met in 2011 at a hotel restaurant in New York. Bruno had just finished a show. Jessica had come from a modeling audition. Their eyes met across the room, and what happened next wasn't instant sparks or dramatic declarations. It was something quieter, more profound. They locked eyes for 40 minutes, sitting still as the world moved around them. Bruno didn't approach at first. He watched, waited, and then finally walked over. That night, they talked until 2 a.m., long after the staff had cleared the chairs and dimmed the lights. Within a year, Jessica made the leap from casual acquaintance to life partner. She moved across the country to be with him, sleeping on an air mattress in a tiny apartment while Bruno toured the world. Slowly, they built a life together. A home in Studio City, a dog named Geronimo, quiet routines that no one outside their bubble could see. Yet, for all the love, Bruno kept it private. Public appearances were rare, and interviews rarely revealed details. He called her "my rock" in one interview, a fleeting glimpse into a deeply personal part of his life. But mostly, he remained silent, letting the music speak where words would have revealed too much. This silence became part of his mystique. For over a decade, the couple existed in the public imagination as a puzzle. People noticed their rare interactions, small gestures on social media, the occasional shared glance at an event. But nothing concrete. Bruno's deliberate silence created tension, curiosity, and a sense of reverence. The public adored the star, but they were left guessing about the man behind the fame. In late 2024, fans noticed something unusual. Jessica's anniversary posts vanished. Social media feeds that once quietly celebrated their relationship now seemed to withhold clues. Bruno was seen alone on tour. Little comments, minor absences, but enough to ignite speculation. Rumors about a split began swirling, though no official word ever confirmed anything. Bruno's silence was strategic. Each unspoken detail, every cryptic post or lack thereof, only intensified fascination. It wasn't avoidance, it was preservation. He had survived childhood trauma, homelessness, and the cutthroat music industry. The one part of his life he could control, he would guard fiercely. His private love story.
For Bruno Mars, fame demanded transparency, but love demanded secrecy. And in that balance, he thrived, creating music that revealed emotion while keeping his heart safely out of the spotlight. The mystery became part of his legend, and the silence, part of the story, were only now beginning to unravel. Even the brightest lights of stardom cast shadows, and for Bruno Mars, one of those shadows came from a world far away from music, the casino floor. Rumors had circulated for years, whispers of nights spent under neon lights, high-stakes tables, and fortunes won and lost in the blink of an eye. Stories began surfacing online, claiming that Bruno had lost millions in poker and blackjack. One figure in particular captured the public's imagination, a staggering $50 million debt to MGM Resorts in Las Vegas. The number alone was enough to make fans gasp. Could someone with a life so seemingly perfect really be buried under such a mountain of gambling losses? The internet went wild. Blogs ran with it. Social media exploded. Hashtags like Bruno Mars debt trended within hours. People speculated endlessly. Had he really wagered tens of millions? Did he perform under the weight of secret financial ruin? Vegas, after all, is a city built on stories like this. Legends of fortune and disaster, of celebrities playing for more than just fun. Bruno, however, handled the rumors in his own unique way, with humor. During a sold-out performance at the Park MGM, he addressed the whispers directly. Looking out at thousands of fans, he quipped, "Ever since they said I'm on the hook for 50 mil, my phone's been dry. Where my friends at when I'm up?" The crowd erupted. Clips of the joke spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. The humor worked to diffuse the tension. Fans laughed, shared the clip, and turned the story into viral content. But the joke only added fuel to the mystery. If he could joke about $50 million in debt, could there be a kernel of truth behind it? People dug deeper, connecting dots from past admissions that Bruno had lost money gambling, the high-stakes lifestyle of Las Vegas performers, and the staggering sums he earns per show. Experts chimed in online, calculating the odds. High rollers in Vegas sometimes wager $50,000 per hand, they pointed out. A few unlucky nights, compounded over several years, could theoretically add up to millions. And Bruno had admitted in interviews that he started gambling before he was even of legal age, once losing a significant amount in a poker game. The rumors weren't entirely implausible. They had just grown into a sensational narrative. Yet despite the speculation, MGM Resorts quickly shut down the story. In statements to major outlets, they clarified Bruno did not owe them anything. Their relationship with the singer was based on mutual respect, not financial entanglement. Investors were reassured, stock prices remained stable, and the rumor slowly lost its grip. Even so, the public remained fascinated. Bruno had created the perfect storm, a man adored for music, rumored to be secretly fighting gambling debts, yet smiling and joking about it on stage. It was a story that blurred the line between reality and myth, adding another layer to his legend. The shadow of gambling didn't destroy him. It became part of his narrative. Fans laughed, speculated, and streamed his songs, while Bruno turned a potential scandal into another unforgettable chapter of his career. In Vegas, it seems, even rumors can be a performance. For Bruno Mars, music has always been more than just a career. It's been a lifeline. Through heartbreak, rumors, and the pressure of global stardom, the one constant was his ability to create, perform, and connect. By 2021, after decades of navigating the highs and lows of fame, Bruno found a way to reinvent himself, turning personal struggles into musical triumphs. The first major spark came with Silk Sonic, his collaboration with the incredible Anderson .Paak. The duo's chemistry was electric, two forces of talent merging into one irresistible sound. From the smooth grooves to the soulful ballads, Silk Sonic wasn't just a band, it was a statement. With their hit Leave the Door Open, Bruno and Anderson transported listeners back to the golden era of R&B while injecting a modern flair. The track soared to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and fans were captivated not just by the sound, but by the intimacy and emotion in every note. For Bruno, it was more than a chart topper. It was a chance to create music that healed him while healing the world around him. Then came another seismic moment, Die With a Smile, a collaboration with none other than Lady Gaga. The song dropped unexpectedly, creating a whirlwind of excitement. Shot like a cinematic masterpiece in black and white, the video felt like a short film with just two voices, a chandelier, and flashes of Morse code fans tried to decode. The track broke streaming records with over 27 million plays in a single day, surpassing even Adele's hits. For Bruno, the song was a reminder that music could still surprise, inspire, and reconnect him with the joy of creation, the pure, unfiltered thrill that first drew him to the stage as a child. Not stopping there, Bruno extended his reach across the globe with a breakthrough collaboration with Rosé from Blackpink. The teased guitar riff on TikTok went viral within hours, signaling a cultural moment in K-pop history. When the full track released, it entered the Billboard Hot 100 at #3, marking the biggest debut for a female K-pop solo artist in the United States. The accompanying live performance at SoFi Stadium was unforgettable. Confetti, thundering sound meters, and a chemistry between Bruno and Rosé that electrified the audience. Music wasn't just a product for Bruno, it was a shared experience, a connection to millions of fans worldwide. Through these collaborations, a clear pattern emerged. Bruno Mars had turned adversity into art. The scandals, the rumors, and the personal heartache, they became the fuel behind his creativity. Every note, every beat, every lyric was a reflection of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, music could be a sanctuary. For Bruno, these projects weren't just hits, they were therapy. They were proof that he could evolve, that he could heal, and that he could continue to surprise the world without losing himself. By leaning into collaboration, experimentation, and sheer musical joy, Bruno Mars had not only staged a comeback, he had rewritten the rules of what it meant to be a modern music icon. In the end, it wasn't the awards, the streams, or the sold-out arenas that mattered most. It was the music itself. The music that saved him, defined him, and ensured that no matter what rumors swirled or obstacles arose, Bruno Mars would always rise again. For years, fans, tabloids, and social media have been swirling with stories about his life. Rumors of millions lost in gambling, heartbreak with Jessica Caban, and private struggles that no one could see behind the glittering stage lights. But now the man himself chose to speak. It began with a live-streamed interview, a rare and intimate moment where Bruno spoke directly to his audience. The air was charged with anticipation. Everyone wanted to know what was true and what was myth. Bruno started by addressing the rumors that had plagued him for years, the alleged $50 million debt to MGM Resorts. He laughed, a warm, knowing laugh, and said, "Look, I've gambled before. Who hasn't? But 50 million? That's Hollywood math, not reality." He admitted to enjoying high-stakes games early in his career, even losing significant amounts, but clarified that he had never been in debt to MGM or any casino to that extent. Then came the most personal revelation: Jessica Caban. Fans had long speculated that songs like When I Was Your Man were about her. Her sporadic public appearances and vanished social media posts had fueled breakup rumors. Bruno explained why he stayed silent all those years. "Jessica and I have always had a private life for a reason.
The love we share doesn't need to be broadcasted. Some things are just ours." He confirmed that their relationship had faced challenges, especially during years of touring and career pressures, but emphasized that it wasn't about drama, it was about preserving something sacred. Next, he touched on his private battles, the struggles that the tabloids could never capture, childhood trauma, early fame, and the pressures that followed him into adulthood. Bruno spoke candidly about how music had been his refuge, his therapy, and his anchor. "I've carried a lot silently," he said. "Performing on stage isn't just about entertainment. It's where I process, heal, and survive." He also acknowledged why he had waited so long to confirm the truth. Bruno explained that years of fame had taught him that silence could protect both himself and those he loved. "Misconceptions and rumors are part of being in the spotlight," he said, "and sometimes it's better to focus on the craft rather than endlessly clarifying every story." His choice to remain quiet wasn't arrogance, it was strategy, a way to maintain control over his narrative while continuing to grow as an artist and person. By the end of the interview, one thing was clear: Bruno Mars had finally reclaimed the narrative. The rumors weren't all true, the heartbreaks weren't all public, and the struggles were deeply personal. Fans got the answers they craved, but more importantly, they saw a man who had endured, evolved, and emerged with honesty, humor, and grace. Bruno closed with a statement that encapsulated everything. "I've lived, I've loved, I've stumbled, but I've always come back to the music. That's the truth. That's my story." At 39, Bruno Mars didn't just confirm the rumors, he controlled the narrative, revealed the human behind the legend, and reminded the world that even global superstardom doesn't mean a life without shadows. After decades of dazzling performances, record-breaking albums, and viral collaborations, Bruno Mars has reached a point few artists ever do: reflection. At 39, after finally addressing rumors, revealing personal struggles, and reclaiming the narrative of his life, the question now is simple: what comes next for a man who seems to have done it all? Bruno's plans for the future are a blend of the expected and the surprising. He isn't slowing down, far from it. Sources close to him have revealed that he's working on new solo material, promising a sound that will once again blend genres, eras, and cultures.
Fans can expect the familiar funk and R&B grooves, but with experimental twists that only Bruno could pull off. There's also talk of a Silk Sonic sequel, expanding on the retro soul magic that captivated millions. And with collaborations across K-pop, pop, and jazz, he's continuing to break barriers that most artists wouldn't even dream of attempting. But his ambitions aren't limited to music. He's quietly investing in creative projects behind the scenes, mentoring young artists, producing for emerging talent, and exploring film and theatrical opportunities. He's no longer just a performer. He's a curator of culture, someone shaping the future of music and entertainment, while leaving a mark that goes far beyond chart-topping hits. His legacy is already extraordinary. From childhood stardom as Little Elvis to global domination with hits like Just the Way You Are, Uptown Funk, and Silk Sonic's Leave the Door Open, Bruno has rewritten what it means to be a modern music superstar. He's shown that success doesn't have to follow a straight line, that early fame, personal struggles, and even public rumors can be transformed into fuel for creativity. He's a genre-bending icon, blending pop, funk, R&B, soul, reggae, and disco, proving that musical boundaries exist only in the mind. But more than the accolades and record sales, what sets Bruno apart is his authenticity and resilience. Fans have watched him grow from a child performing 1,000 shows before age 10 to a man who has navigated heartbreak, personal trials, and public speculation with grace. His willingness to finally share the truth about his life at 39 shows courage, humility, and a commitment to honesty that few stars ever display.